we've brought back one of our favorite jump segments out of the studio into Portland. As Brian noted during our break, these little cute signs made the trip, and that means it is time for another edition of BS or Real Talk with the Jump. And let's start indeed with Damian Lillard. As we mentioned before the break, he injured his ribs in Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. Kevon Looney goes on top of him. You can see him grimace, and then he starts pointing to his ribs. He didn't say that he was hurt before Game 3. In fact, he didn't say he was hurt after Game 3. He said this injury is not affecting his game. BS or Real Talk, guys? Oh, we got some sound.
I don't think it's something that's affecting my game. It's there, but it's not something that's affecting anything that I'm doing. Obviously, you feel it, but that's it.
Okay. Now, ooh, both of you.
I'm going to give Dame, who's usually brutally honest, I'm going to give him a pass because discussing injuries in the postseason, I never think the player is telling the truth and probably shouldn't tell the truth.
You know what? I'm going to not give him a pass. I'm going to respect the way that he answered that question because players don't want to say that the injury is causing them to play bad. So I respect what he's saying, but I think it's BS. I think that it's affecting his play and it's affecting his team play because as he goes, the team goes, and he just hasn't been the same player that we saw in the last
rib injury,
series.
Scott, like every move you make, you feel it, you know? I think
it is probably making it harder for him to do the very tall task ahead of him. I am not sure it's his main problem. Scotty, you have talked more than anyone about how much more aggressive he's got to be. He's obviously fighting off. He's in his second series worth of fighting off traps and double teams and sometimes triple teams of people rolling players at him. He's not moving without the ball in quite the same way that I know you've talked about you want him to be doing. I imagine having a separated rib makes all of that harder. But I also know there are some things the coaches would like him to do differently in this game tonight.
Yeah, I do think, and hopefully that this injury isn't holding him back, but I think it is holding him back because we haven't seen Dame make any adjustments. We haven't seen him up-tempo the game. He really has sort of stayed in the same mode, hoping for a change, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I talked to him after that Game 3, and one thing he said to me, he goes, man, 20 seconds to go, and they're still doubling and trapping me, and the game didn't even matter. We couldn't have even scored, and he was frustrated with that. But I wonder if that's something that he should take home with him, thinking this is going to happen from the time I get out of the bed to the time I get to the court. There's never going to be a let up, and he's got to figure out a way through it. And that's a lot easier to sit here at a desk and say than do. I mean, this Warriors defense, they're elite for a reason. Draymond Green, obviously a big part of that. He played such good basketball, guys.
Oh, man.
The other night, and is one of the big guys who has made Damian Lillard's job almost impossible. And he's focused on basketball in a way that, frankly, we didn't see all the time through the regular season or even at the beginning of the playoffs. Here's what he said about how he's changed with the way that he talks about officials and flopping, actually.
My son was playing like he was shooting and flopping. I'm sorry, you gotta stop watching the NBA. Like, shooting and falling on the floor like, oh, Daddy, help me up. It's like, no, gee, what you flopping for? But no, it's just like, really impressionable at this age, and I want to make sure I'm setting a good example for them as well.
That's amazing. His 2.5-year-old son was flopping.
I want our producers to hold that in archives for next year. When he says he's done complaining, he's done flopping. This is Draymond at his best. When he's focusing on playing. As bad as the last series started with the discourse with the officials.
And the Rockets and the reports and everything.
That everybody has moved on. We have, knock on wood, we have not had that kind of focus. And the Warriors have been at the heart of it by moving on and focusing on basketball.
I'll piggyback off what Brian said. He has changed tremendously. His play has went up, but his mouth has went down. and it's great. It's great to see him playing that way. His leadership and the things that he's doing out on the basketball court has really been standing out in this series alone.
He was running his mouth at Seth Curry the other night. I'm going to keep an eye on that little action.
I mean, he's still Draymond. Draymond's going to be Draymond. But he's channeling it into the game in a different way. And I do think it's interesting how we saw players take responsibility after the officiating was so much the focus of that first game against the Rockets. I know the league office was upset, but it was notable to me that the players came out afterward and said, we don't want the game to feel like this. We don't want people
Draymond
out
was
there.
At the lead of
and
that.
He was at the lead of that. Now maybe he's at the vanguard of the anti-flopping movement.
Just keep it in the archives.
Keep it in the archives. I just can't get over that his 2.5-year-old was flopping after imitating his father. Just saying.